So, hello everybody. Okay, this microphone is in the position. Maybe as you enter, you started the panel here, we had the first talk also by somebody who you presented yourself as not being an economist. I think even though I am since 2 years based at the University of Economics and Business, I would still not consider myself an economist. I'm actually from a pretty interdisciplinary background, which makes it pretty tricky to put myself into to put a label to myself, let's say. So I started with English philology, and then I went on to organizational studies and leadership, and then I ended up in the Institute for Ecological Economics and the Department for Social Economics at the Vienna University of Economics and Business, where I am perfectly aware that we are pretty much in an exceptional situation as well to have an institutionalized department for social economics. And in the beginning, when I started there, I'm a researcher there and I'm also doing a PhD slowly. When I started, I would say that it took me a lot of time to understand what am I actually supposed to be doing there, let's say, to make it a bit more valuable. But that came up very quickly. And what I'm going to present here is basically a fun project that I was doing at a side with 2 other PhD students. You can see their names, they are not here, but they put a lot of effort into the paper. When this fun project that we had, it started basically, as I mentioned, I'm not an economist by training, so when I enrolled to the PhD program, I also got a bunch of bachelor courses to complete that usually people do at this university. And the first course that I took was macroeconomics, where on the first class the instructor that was teaching it is actually a self-declared feminist economist. Literally said, we are going to work for 6 months now, or the whole semester, not 6 months, on using models and theories that have nothing to do with reality. And if anybody asks what is, for example, if somebody asks a real life example and wants to try to explain it with those models, it's not going to happen. And that was really, I think, the first big shock in my education, that I already finished 2 masters by then and I have never been in such a situation. And you could see that a couple of people in the room were also shocked. Others, I think they just took it the way it was, and maybe they were used to it, maybe they were not first-year students, I don't know. But yeah, that was the first, let's say, big question mark. And very quickly, also talking to other colleagues at the department and at the institute, this topic of, let's say, okay, we have a bunch of researchers who work pretty much in the area outside of the mainstream and who would see themselves as adhering to a heterodox school of economic thought. But then at the same time, we are the biggest university of economics in Europe, and we have over 20,000 students, and most of those students are being taught just based on one specific theoretical approach. And that was also another big warning sign. Okay, how can that be? Is it the case that maybe students of economics are a bit mentally challenged? I don't know. I mean, is it that you can literally go to any other area outside of economics and you are being taught critical thinking skills and you actually learn how to analyze things, and somehow there is a whole world there of economics that maybe until you actually swim into it and dive there, you don't realize that this is how this education is happening. So then somehow having those little warning signs around, me and some other people, we literally accidentally met people from students who are part of the pluralism economics group. I don't know if you are aware of that. It's a pretty big movement of students that is awesome, really. And they already are present in over 30 countries. I was actually looking only here today if there is a Polish pluralism group. I haven't managed to see something specifically with that name, but I'm pretty sure there are people working in this area as well. But anyway, students who create this pluralism in economics movement, one of my favorite tenets that they are trying to push is to bring reality back to the economics classroom. And this is just, let's say, a very catchy, broad slogan, that has a lot of other, of course, points behind, and one of them is, for example, just basically going away from trying to present a discipline in a very monistic way, and a lot of other critical thoughts that have been said here today about neoclassical economics. This is also reflected in what this group is trying to change. And yeah, and also that's why I'm saying that it was a fun project, because it was also like showing us a lot about the institutional embedding of this specific paradigm. Like you said, you were happy that somebody is somewhere hiring a Marxist guy. So another point was that first we talked with all three of us. We have one supervisor who is apparently not a mainstream person, and we suggested, okay, you know what we would like to do? We would actually try to see what's going on at our university here, and see how people who are teaching micro, macro, and financial policy, I don't know the name in English, Wirtschafts- und Finanzpolitik, anybody? Finance, right? So 3 basic courses that I think globally at economics universities people do receive. How do they situate themselves in those debates? And we actually mentioned to our supervisor, okay, we're going to do it, and in the beginning she said that this is a crazy idea because nobody will want to actually give us the data. So it's really, I think that by the time when we started this project, we were all so, this can't be, this is in the 21st century, I mean, this is, what are we doing here? It was really so confusing, this work.
This organization, is there anybody from Asia, Africa, or Latin America? No, only Europe, Western Europe?
No, it's not only Western Europe, there is also, I mean here, those are just examples. It's just part, but it's European
Russia,
mainly.
From Poland, nobody from Russia, from Poland.
I don't know about Russia. I was trying today to just Google if there is a group in Polish. I haven't seen
From Asia.
From Asia, I also haven't seen anything. Latin America is there, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and I think I have to speed up. We tried to basically, the why bother slide is somehow, I find it not so necessary to have it, but still in conferences where we were presenting it before, this question was literally asked sometimes. So let's say that our main motivation is the fact that ideas have power to shape reality, and that what we are getting from the university education is also going to influence what we are later on and how we are, right? And we can see it all over the place, also in Poland. And I think that also, sorry, okay, I move on. So skipping that up, that's what I wanted to say. An interesting example of how ideas shape reality, specifically in teaching economics content, is a paper by Ferraro et al., not so recently, I think like 2014 or 2012, where they actually did empirical research with students who have been educated in economics universities and outside of economics universities, and somehow the graduates of economics universities are a bit more self-interested than everybody else. So this was also a pretty shouting.
Is it controlled for people before they enter university?
I think they did it in the beginning and in the end. So it's actually a very interesting study. And I guess maybe 3 years of being taught that everybody is self-interested is later on having some impact, right? So, so basically what we did, as I said, is that we took the teachers and the instructors in our focus here. Also because we kind of see this pluralism debate now as being mainly focused on students, and a lot of people try to corner it as, okay, they don't know what they are saying. And we try to change, let's say, the unit of analysis. And what we wanted to see is to bring this discourse, so basically we wanted to see what kind of position is there presented by the pluralism movement, and we wanted to see how the instructors from our university see themselves in that. Can they position themselves against that? And what would be the overlaps in their perceptions, and possibly from those overlaps maybe we could see some trigger points that the pluralist group could use in communicating with our university specifically, right? So you have to bear in mind that this is a very context-set study, and but at the same time we saw it as necessary because a lot of decisions are made on the level of the university, right? Like this, coming back to my macro teacher, I mean, she has there are 500 students in the end of the semester that take the same test that she has nothing to do with it, right, in creating it, because it's decided by a group of people responsible for setting up the curriculum for this program. So it's also very interesting how the role of the teacher changes, and you are literally just supposed to be a little instrument that brings a message from point A to B, but that does not necessarily reflect your own interest and your own perceptions in that. So there's really a lot of outraging questions popping up on every step of that project. And how we did that, tried to see, okay, what could be the trigger points, what could be the overlaps, is that we use a pretty non-standard method called Q. Anybody here knows Q? Yeah, that's usually the case.
James Bond.
No, not Q from James Bond. Yeah, so Q is a method originating from social psychology, but it has been increasingly used also in terms of policy making. And for example, this is a method that is basically working perfect for socially contested topics, so where we have a lot of debates and a lot of issues, and it takes a lot of time to try to capture these debates in single statements, which later on the participants of the study individually sort into a forced distribution. And each of the statements has a little, maybe I show you. So see, you literally produce those kind of things, and each statement has a little a short statement on it. Then you take a happy participant and you give them, in our case that was 47 statements, so it's also a bit of a long process where a person has to sit down and go through those statements and decide, okay, what would I agree with? What would I disagree with? What do I not have enough, or what is totally, what I don't care about? So you take your time, you do this sorting procedure, and you have to force yourself to select extremes. So you have, for example, only 2 spots to decide what do you most disagree with, or what do you most agree with. So in this way, you can capture somebody's perception on a given topic. And in this method, what is happening later on is that you apply a factor analysis. So, like I said, it's a mixed method, it's a small n method, so the factor analysis is, in our case, was done on 24 participants in that case, which is also a very bad method to present on economics conferences. So yeah, if anybody has a question about generalizability of the results, that was not our point, okay? We wanted to understand our local case, we don't want to say that everybody around the world is thinking like that.
This factor for every person in a group, of course.
Sorry?
For every person. For every person.
No, the point is that, so we had 24 participants, right? We managed to reach a pretty mixed group, and later on we got those 24 sorts, right? And then Q has its dedicated software where you conduct the factor analysis, and later on you see how many factors are actually statistically viable, and those factors are then seen as a common, they group similar ways of sorting from the participants. So then factors are then like an idealized way of thinking that is represented by a specific group of people that stand behind this factor. And yeah, what was interesting for us is that we thought in the beginning that, for example, the educational background would have quite some telling of the instructor. So let's say if we have a person who is only trained in economics, maybe they would have a tendency to be more mainstream and more, let's say, not so happy about the pluralist debate. That was not really the case. So yeah, our demographic factors were not so important here. But what was important is that we actually managed to get 4 factors that were statistically relevant. So that means that 17 people, in our case, 17 people out of 24 were actually behind those factors. So that's pretty good for that method. And later on, the factors are represented in a narrative format. So you write a little story about, okay, this is the way this story is, the pluralism debate or like economics is perceived by this given factor. And on the basis of this narrative explanation, you give labels and names. So we try to come up with those names. We always get a lot of comments about the names. So I will just walk you quickly through the essence, let's say. So the strongest factor that we had was the moderate pluralists, as we call them, although I want to change it into shy pluralists. because those were, let's say, this was a group of people that was really saying, okay, we need, the world is a complex place, we need a lot of theoretical approaches to explain it in better detail, to understand it better. We cannot limit ourselves to only one perspective. There is context dependency. There's the questions of, so different points of view were really given high importance. But then on the other hand, when you, let's say, when confronted with the perspective of actual change, they would not be so into that, right? So it's a bit of a strange dissonance. It's like people who think that, okay, there's one thing happening, but I will do another. And also, we had a lot of statements that were with which we were trying to portray the questions of models and this mathematical formalism that was also mentioned here before about neoclassical school of economics. And moderate pluralists, for example, were still not so, let's say, critical and reflective about how models are created. So that was a bit of a, that's why we call them moderate or shy. Then we had one of my favorite groups, which was responsible pluralists. But that's probably because I'm in ecological economics. So those were the people who were, let's say, they really see their work as having a certain mission. So they are economists, they wanted to do economics because they wanted to influence reality and they wanted to understand stuff better and they wanted to actually make a change. So especially in the context of multiple crises that we are dealing right now, I would say that this is really great that such people are there. And they were very critical of the status quo of teaching and very, let's say, explicit about, again, this fact that there is no universality and that there should be, that should be definitely reflected in teaching. And maybe I go on. And then we have the mainstreamers, which basically is a group. I mean, I don't think I have to even explain that. I think a lot of people here at the conference know what I'm talking about when I say mainstreamers. And this is pretty much of a reflection of what is going on right now. And a very interesting part that was, or let's say characteristic of this specific group was that they were also very explicit about saying like, okay, there is complexity and of course we would need different perspectives and so on. But on the other hand, the best way of dealing with complexity is to just, through abstraction. So models are, yes, simplistic, but it doesn't matter because we cannot handle a non-simplistic model, right? So we were really thinking that this is a bit of a, if you want to think visually, it's like seeing a horse with the blinders, right? And okay, there is like a horrible situation going on, but I will just think about it simple and everything will be fine. It's really, it was a very, very interesting factor. And also, one thing that we found here with this group was that they were pretty critical of the methods of teaching. So that was still a very good sign and actually one of the very few trigger points that we could potentially see among this group. So for example, those giant multiple choice tests and so on, they were very critical of that. But also what came out with this factor is that I think that this was a bit of an entertaining research for them because the topic itself was really not treated seriously. So we even heard a comment that, oh, this is like a debate of old guys in old sweaters who want to hook up with students, like I said before. It was really also very, very disturbing information coming from this side. And this one thing that really annoys me deeply is the fact that they were really saying, okay, we should not bring different theoretical perspectives because the students will get confused and frustrated. So, poor economics students again. It's really very, very annoying. And then we had also applied pluralists, which were, this was basically the group that had two main messages. One was that economics is definitely related to policy, and whatever comes out from the hands of economists should be should also reflect that. So if we get a model that maybe can be seen as simplistic, that should at least be transparently said and not hidden in terms of assumptions and so on. And also this was the only group that actually pointed out to philosophy of science and history as elements that should also be covered in this undergraduate education from economics. And yeah, so in general, I think I'm running out of time, so I will just say that we set our discussion in the framework of discursive institutionalism. So we used a political science framework, and something that may be also really interesting for everybody who's sitting here, there's a really nice paper from this lady, Vivian Schmidt, who is behind discursive institutionalism, co-authored with Mark Thatcher, I think, from 2014, where they are using this framework to show why neoliberal ideas are so persistent in policy in Europe. Very interesting paper. So, for example, they show that that the fact that neoclassical school of thought has nothing to do with reality is actually paradoxically leading to the resilience of the ideas, because you cannot be confronted with, okay, you did something wrong, well, I was not looking at reality, right? So it's really a very good read, I think, for this audience. And we fished out 3 key areas in the discussion, so complexity, context, sensitivity, and historical embedding, and responsibility. And responsibility both in this mission understanding, but also responsibility in terms of, okay, if we have change, who should be doing this change? Is it the university as an institution, or are those individual instructors maybe responsible more for incorporating some pluralistic, non-orthodox views? And yeah, well, I hope I got your attention here with that paper. It's available as a working paper from the side of our institute, from our webpage of the Institute of Ecological Economics, so you can take a look. And we are now doing the reviews for publication, so we still are very open for feedback and so on. So yeah, thank you.